Are you a fan of older games? Do you have fond memories of playing your old consoles as a kid? Or maybe you want to introduce your own children to the gaming world that you grew up with, as opposed to the unoptimized, microtransaction-filled, live service free-to-play trash we get today. Well, unless you have those consoles lying around still, and the games, and you're willing to take them apart, which, requires a bit of skill, and dust them out, perhaps even get into some soldering and replace some capacitors, not to mention the condition that childhood you left your discs in, probably scratched to hell. If that doesn't sound great to you, then emulation is probably right down your alley. You get to experience all of these games with a few new features, 4K upscaling, widescreen patches, the list goes on. But look, you probably clicked on this video because I'm preaching to the choir. You're probably already 100% on board with emulation and don't need any further convincing. And you probably remember the golden era of put disk in, game plays. That's it. Except all of that goes out the window as soon as you're using Windows. Because naturally, even if you're emulating games, Windows is going to shove 1,000 pop-ups in your face, especially the pretend updates, which are actually full-page ads, which are going to tell you to use Microsoft's recommended browser settings. And even if you can get past all the ads that Microsoft bakes into their operating system, whether it be for Edge or Copilot, if you're a lover of PlayStation 3 games, I'm sorry to say you're out of luck. The newest builds of RPCS3 are broken, and it's not the developer's fault in this case. It's actually incredible the amount of progress they've made to make PlayStation 3 emulation an actual thing, considering how complex the actual PlayStation 3 hardware was. This is a Microsoft problem. And I'm not going to get into the weeds of it, that's all you really need to know. In fact, by the time you're watching this video, it might be fixed. And of course, as I was editing this footage, they fixed it, which is quite a surprise, and I'm very happy for those people who don't want to leave Windows. But for those people who are sick of Microsoft breaking things continuously and would like a simpler experience, please continue watching. But whether you love PlayStation 3 games and you would like to play them, or whether you love PlayStation 2, PlayStation 1, original Xbox, and the Nintendo consoles, if you want a pop-up free experience where you can just get to the games without all the nonsense that Microsoft throws in your face, keep watching. Now, if this is the first video you've seen on this channel, I'm going to make lots of references to other videos, but under no circumstances are they required watching. This can be a standalone video. And speaking of those videos, what we covered was getting up and running with our Steam library, ready to play Steam games on 5 different operating systems that weren't Windows or Mac OS. Now here's the part where some people might pull a face because they've heard bad things about this. I implore you to stay with me, because if you love emulation but you haven't heard of alternative operating systems, just hang on for a second. All these operating systems were just different flavors of Linux. No, don't click out of here. This isn't the Linux you might think you know. You don't have to memorize 100,000 lines of code to do the most basic things. It's actually almost a Windows-like experience, but like closer to Windows XP back when things worked as opposed to everything breaking. Maybe even a little bit of a Windows 7 experience there. So there's no terminal in any of these videos, and I'm not about to tell you to use terminal now. Fun fact, any single distribution that I look at of Linux that requires a terminal gets a miss from me, because this is meant to be easy to use for beginners as well, or people who just want simple experiences. But rather than explain this to you, I'm just going to show you. So here is Mint, Linux Mint. This was the second operating system we ever looked at on this channel. And all we need to do is open up our software center. This is kind of like a store, but it's not really a store. So think of the Microsoft Store or the Mac App Store, except there's nothing to buy because almost everything is free and open source. And this is actually here to help you, not get you to pay more money for things you could buy cheaper elsewhere. And unlike Windows and Mac OS, the store, or as I'll call it from now on, the software center, is actually a perfectly acceptable way to get your apps on Linux. So I'll go over to the software manager in Mint. And once I open that up, I'm going to search for DuckStation. And there's DuckStation right there. I click on that and I let it download. So now let's go and look for PlayStation 2 emulation with PCSX2. There it is, click install, and it'll be on the way soon. Next up, and I'm glad this happened in this operating system because it leads me on to another thing I need to point out. I'm going to search for RPCS3, the reason why some of you will probably hear. It's not going to come up. That's because RPCS3 isn't officially on FlatHub. This store here is using an application format called Flatpaks. Quick crash course into what Flatpaks are. Flatpaks are one of 3 used on any single Linux distribution package formats. So the idea is that whether it's Flatpaks, app images, or snaps, it doesn't matter what version or flavor of Linux you're running, it should work. But notice I mentioned there are 3 there. The developers of RPCS3 don't have an official Flatpak version. If you go to their website, they actually have an app image version. The reason that I'm not downloading the app image version is because one of the things I love about these software centers is you can update all of your apps with the click of a button, and even update your operating system at the same time. It's a one-click update process, and it's the complete opposite to what it's like on Windows, where I'd have to update DuckStation, PCSX2, RPCS3, and Zemu all separately, and then update the operating system to get a full page ad to tell me, okay, you know where I'm going with that. I'm not going to go there. So in order to get RPCS3 in the store for easy updates, we would go over here and enable unverified Flatpaks. And there is a warning there, as there should be. However, I have personally used the Flatpak version of DuckStation, PCSX2, RPCS3, and Zemu. Zemu being the original Xbox emulator. I have played games all the way through on all of these emulators, and I've played with 4K upscaling and widescreen patches, which is why I can confidently say that the Flatpak versions work. But if you have a problem with, say, the Flatpak version of RPCS3, what do? If you're the sort of person who sits tight and waits for an update and goes and plays something else if something breaks, that's cool. Flatpak's absolutely the way to go. Or if you're the tech person or sysadmin for your family and friends, then Flatpaks are great because you don't have to teach your family and friends how to update individual apps. You say, hey, go here, click this button, and you're done. That's been my personal experience as well. But if you are the sort of person who likes to file bug reports and help the developers in that way, in that case, you would only file a bug report if you're using the official version, because they can't do anything about unofficial versions. So if you're using the app image, you're good there. And I will probably do a completely separate video about app images later. But right now, I'm recommending Flatpaks because this is also for people who want to get their friends and family off of Windows and have a million less tech support calls because they've got a big pop-up saying, you guessed it. So once we've enabled unverified Flatpaks, we can search for RPCS3. You might need to close and reopen the software center for a refresh, but there it is. And finally, Zemu. And if you're doing this on Mint, I highly recommend doing these one by one, as I did them all together and they did take an extra minute to install, but it wasn't that long. But okay, maybe you don't like the look of Mint. Maybe this isn't your jam. That's absolutely fine. How about Manjaro? So we'll flip over to Manjaro. And with Manjaro, Flatpaks are in the store, but they're not enabled by default. So we'll have to go over to the hamburger menu, go over to this menu, then over to third party, and then enable Flatpaks. Then I'll close and reopen just for good measure. And now when I search for DuckStation, there it is. PCSX2, there it is. RPCS3, you got it, and Zemu. I won't be touching any Nintendo emulation in this video because I don't want Nintendo's lawyers smelling blood in the water and sending cease and desists to me and the people who maintain those Nintendo emulators, because let's face it, the Nintendo community has been through enough. So that's Manjaro, but maybe you still don't like the look of Manjaro. Okay, all right. Let's move on to the next. This is Bazzite. Here in Bazzite, we have the Discover store down in the dock. I'll click on that and no extra tinkering required. The Discover store takes care of everything. DuckStation, PCSX2, RPCS3, and Zemu. Say that 10 times really fast. So if you have seen any of the other videos on this channel up to this point, you'll know that there's two distros that I haven't addressed yet, Ubuntu and Fedora. We'll come back to Fedora in a moment, but remember how I told you the only reason I'm recommending Flatpaks is because I've personally had good experiences with them and played a lot of games with them. One thing I haven't had an experience with, but I've seen plenty of negative press about, are snaps. Ubuntu wants you to exclusively use snaps through their store. When I go and search for DuckStation, PCSX2, RPCS3, and Zemu in the store, I'm only getting the snap versions. And if you did watch my Ubuntu video, then you might remember that installing Steam the official way, downloading from the website, also required a terminal. And another thing too, if you're not sure if you're using the official version of something, all you have to do is search for FlatHub in your browser and you will see whether something has been verified or not. Because all these different stores, some of them have tick marks next to them telling you it's absolutely verified from the developer and you're all good to go. Some of them don't. I wish all of them did because it would make life a lot easier, especially if you're trying to give independence to not so tech savvy people and you want to give them the freedom to install apps. But Ubuntu puts a tick mark next to it even when it's not official. It's official from Ubuntu, but the snap version of Steam has had its fair share of problems. So that's why I'm not recommending Ubuntu here, unless you're happy to use the terminal. Now on to Fedora. Just like Mint and Manjaro, we have to go and enable something extra in the Discover store here. To do that, all we have to do is open Discover and go to Settings. Once we're there, you'll see a little button that says Add FlatHub. So once you click on that, you'll be prompted to input the password that you put at installation at the very beginning or the password that you logged in with. Once you've done that, close Discover, reopen Discover, and now when you search for DuckStation, PCSX2, RPCS3, and Zemu, they're going to be there ready to go. So I'll go and download them, but I haven't shown you anything up and running yet. So that's what I'm going to do now. Now, if I go through each of these emulators one by one, we're going to be here all day. The video will be way too long. So I'm going to laser focus on RPCS3 because some of you might be people who love playing PlayStation 3 games and you've been exiled by Windows. Once we've downloaded RPCS3, we'll need to go to the PlayStation website here, follow this link, and find the PlayStation 3 firmware. Once we've found the PlayStation 3 firmware, we download it. It will go to our file structure, potentially our downloads folder, and that's exactly the same as Windows and Mac, nothing fancy here. And then I'll open RPCS3 and I will go to install firmware under file. Once that's done, I'm going to create a folder to put my games in. Again, it's almost exactly like Windows and Mac. It's super easy to use. It just has a different coat of paint. Now I'll tell RPCS3 where that folder is so that it can scan it for games. I'm also going to put a game there, namely this right here, a backup of the physical copy of Gran Turismo 5. So with that in the folder and RPCS3 facing that folder, ready to scan for new games, now I will connect my controller, and my experience with controllers has been you plug and play them. I think the last time I was on Windows, you needed to do something special to get a PlayStation 4 controller working. I'm not sure if that's still the case. Please feel free to let me know, not that I'll ever touch Windows ever again. And if not out of the box, then after one system update, which is why I always recommend doing an update after a fresh install of a brand new operating system. So with that controller connected, now I'll go to configuration, down to pads. I was looking for controller before, so this kind of confused me, but pads is controllers. And then I'll map the keys of my controller to RPCS3. Now I'll double click on the game and it should boot, ready to go. If you've been around with RPCS3 for a while, you know that some games require special settings to use, whether you're on Windows or Mac. So to find that, back on the RPCS3 website, we click on compatibility, we find our game. Don't be discouraged if it says in-game, because there are lots of games here which I have played all the way through, even though they just say in-game. So once you've found that, click on it. It is actually a link that will take you to the wiki page that will show you custom settings that you might want to set if you're having performance issues or want to get the best performance out of your game. Again, that happens on Windows and Linux, so it's not just a Linux thing. So just like that, you're up and running, playing PlayStation 3 games without the nonsense from Windows. You don't have to worry about pop-up notifications telling you that you need to update or your computer's probably going to catch fire. You don't need to worry about full-page ads. You can just turn it on and play your games. And in another video in the future, I will actually show adding these games to Steam to use in big picture mode to turn this into a Steam console, because some of you might be really interested in that. And you can't do it on Windows because Windows doesn't have auto login without doing a registry edit. And if you don't know what a registry edit is, that's absolutely fine. You shouldn't need to know what a registry edit is to use an operating system. But every operating system that we've covered on this channel so far, all of these Linux distributions have auto login. So we can set up a Steam console sometime in the future. So if all of that sounds incredible to you and you're ready to make the jump, or maybe even just put it on a spare computer and make that computer your retro gaming console, then I would recommend watching any of these videos. I think I got that right. These videos will show you the experience of installing this operating system from the get-go, all the way to installing Steam. So if you pick one of those Linux distributions and throw what you've learned in this video on top, you should be good to go to get up and running not only with your Steam library and most of your games working through Proton, but also your emulated games working as well without any of the nonsense of a company that's trying to steal your data to train their AI to sell you more things that you don't need. Congratulations on being free of Windows.